FLSA, that is the federal minimum wage and overtime law, does not count holiday pay as time worked for overtime eligibility. So even if you do pay employees either for the holiday when they don't work or additional time when they do work, that compensation and the hours that it represents does not count towards overtime eligibility under the FLSA. The same is true in New York, under New York law, where I think most of the audience is, but other state laws might vary occasionally in that respect. On the other hand, if you have a company policy or union contract that says otherwise, then you would have to follow that, especially in the unionized context. It's not unusual for union to negotiate where they have the right to be paid on holidays, maybe time and a half, maybe double time in some cases, or what have you. So I don't want to mislead you and say, oh, you don't have to follow that. If you've agreed to it, you have to follow it. If it's in your company policies, employee handbook, etc., you should be following it. But I just want to point out what's legally required. And that can also mean that that time under policy or agreement has to be included toward time worked for overtime. Again, this can be a difference between what the law strictly requires and what you as a company have agreed to do. Exempt employees, so here it's important to note we're talking about salaried exempt employees that receive time off for holidays have to be paid their full weekly salary for any week in which they worked. In other words, take this week, Thanksgiving, if you have exempt salaried employees who get Thursday and Friday off, they still need to be paid the full salary for the week unless they're scheduled to work one of those days and don't show up under certain circumstances. Then they might not have to be paid, but we're talking about the situation where you give them the day off. So you can't deduct from their salary when the office is closed for the holiday. But if you don't have paid holidays or want to have a policy of not having paid holidays for your salaried employees, theoretically you could do that and require them to use personal or vacation time. But if they are out of personal or vacation time, you would then not be able to make a deduction from their pay. This is a pretty technical and complicated issue that probably doesn't come up that much. I doubt many companies are trying to deduct from salaried employees' pay for Thanksgiving, for example, but there might be other holidays where it's a different situation, so we wanted you to have that information. If the office is open, as I kind of alluded to a minute ago, exempt employees who just say, I'm not coming to work, whether allowed or against the employer's wishes, could have their salary reduced if they don't work the whole day. But that gets more complicated. If they call in sick, then you might not be able to make that deduction unless you have what the Department of Labor's consider a bona fide sick leave policy. So this is a little bit more detail than I want to cover in full here, but I wanted to note the issues. Also, you can generally have a policy requiring employees to work the day before and after a holiday in order to be received holiday pay. There's nothing legally problematic about that, as long as it's not inconsistent with an established company policy or agreement with the employees or a union if there is one, because again, you don't have to pay the holiday pay in the first place, so you can put whatever conditions you want on earning it.